Oh, yo, what's going on? It's Terrell Hall of Fame, D-Line, TBKC, and all that sweet, beautiful, wonderful shit. Beautiful people, what's going on? It's me. I thank y'all for all of the well wishes and different things. And this is like the 75th take of this video. Probably the hardest video I've done, but I thank y'all for all the love and the respect and everything that y'all have shown. And I even thank the assholes who tried to take the moment to talk shit and be yourselves. You know what I mean? You are what you are, too, motherfuckers. But at the end of the day, Denzel. I tell you what. I remember when I was initially doing this breeding. It was supposed to be Paco, as many of you know, and unfortunately, Paco was attempts to assassinate Paco. Most ridiculous shit ever. Marco didn't deserve it. And Paco definitely didn't deserve to have to go through all of that. But so we switched over because we didn't know if Paco was ever going to be right again. And, big shout out to Marco Suarez for making everything happen. So we got the breeding done with Gargoyle. And after seeing Gargoyle, I was like, damn, this dog is almost perfect. If you could just put more size on him, fix that underbite, and fix that tail, and we ready to go. And that's basically what we did. I remember at the time I was telling people, like, man, look, I'm going to make a male version of Hallie with a better head. And I was talking my shit, but I felt like that she was going to do it. I never thought that she would do it in a way that it was her exact patterns. So, that morning that the puppies were born, it was a crazy morning. I let my sister borrow my truck. And I was at home and bloop, there's the first puppy that came out. And we weren't expecting it. The C-section was actually scheduled for the next day. And the puppy pops out. And unfortunately, that first puppy was stillborn. Looked a lot like Denzel. It was amazing, but a lot bigger. That was a big ass puppy. And so, now we're panicking. So finally, my sister gets up there to pick me up. And boom, on the way up there in the back seat, Rome pops out. The dog that would become known as Rome pops out, the blue Brindle. So I'm like, oh boy, let's hurry up and get here. We finally got there. She didn't pop out another one. We got her there, and this was crazy because they actually asked me to come into the room, and they never did that. Usually you would stand outside and watch. You could watch through the glasses. They did the C-section, but they wouldn't tell you to come in. Well, she told me to come in. The nurse told me to come in. The fourth puppy out was Denzel. I never even seen the rest of the puppies because at that point in time, as soon as I saw that color pattern, I was like, damn, we done reproduced this bitch. I called my boy Danny down at Top Shelf and I told him, we did it, fool. We was talking our shit. I never seen the rest of the puppies born. It ended up being a pretty special litter. You had a 5 champions in one litter. Both Cephas ended up winning a champion. He was an XL, big dog. I remember the dude was mad at me because he turned out to be an XL. I was like, shit happens, you know what I mean? But he still won a lot and he did his thing. You had Biggie. Biggie's in a lot of dogs' pedigrees too. Big Brindle boy. Biggie was very big. Biggie is to this day is the only dog to champ out in 2 classes in the ABKC. He was an extreme champion and a standard champion. Yeah, they kept on pushing him back and forth, trying to decide what he was because he was so clean that he could compete in standard, but he was so big, on that frame, they wanted him to be in the extreme class. But yeah, he ended up with enough points and enough titles to be a champion in either one. Rome, ended up being a champion and eventually was sold to a pretty wealthy guy down in Puerto Rico who didn't have much interest in showing. He just wanted a badass dog. Dude had horses and all that stuff. And Rome created some badass dogs, As a matter of fact, RKC national champion and one of the best dogs in the breed ever. German Ruger is actually off of a Rome daughter, you know. But long story short, what happened after that is, and I'm just telling y'all Denzel's story. I had him until he was about 6 months, and then at that point in time, my history caught up to me, and I ended up catching a case and going away for a couple years. And during that time, Dion had him, and we would talk a lot, while I was in jail, and I was approving breedings, and I was basically like a co-ownership. We was working together, and thanks to the shout out to the Hall of Fame Rhode Island family, Danny G and Dave. They made sure that the dog got shown, and shortly before I came home, 2010 Nationals, boom. Uh, Denzel wins the 2010 Nationals, the biggest sold out Nationals ever, still to this day. And one of the best quotes of his career was from Ron Ramos. Said that this was the if it was an epitome of what a pocket would be at that time, it was Denzel. Called the dog as close to perfect as you could be for a pocket. Well, then I came home, and after I came home, it was more mayhem, which I'll tell you about in a later time. But with me being on probation, I couldn't show him as much, and I didn't care to show it to ABKC really. It just wasn't. I came home raising hell about the conditions of the dogs and the way that they had let things change a couple years as I was gone. So I didn't really want to be over there, although me and Dave sort of stayed in touch with each other. Um, so that's when Denzel continued his legacy and became the first ever BBCR champion, the registry owned by Cameron Wembley. And he went in there and he did his thing in a few shows in there, a couple best in shows, doing what Denzel does, no problem. And then he ended up getting the championship in 3 shows. Did the same thing with the UBKC, which is now defunct. Very good competition there early because Lou was putting out big prizes and stuff, big cash prizes. So the UBKC actually ended up getting swallowed up by the RKC. I think Fabian bought out a lot of their stuff when they decided they no longer wanted to go. And one of the cool parts about, I guess, the RKC to tie in all the Denzel and that litters shit was when the RKC had their first championship. It was pretty cool because Denzel's kids, they had a thing where their nationals, they did the top 3 dogs or whatever. Well, the first in there was the Bison, Denzel's son, 3 times grand champion, following in his father's footsteps because Denzel was the first ever 3 registry champion, so he became the first ever 3 registry grand champion. Like I tell y'all, this dude is written all over the history books for first, his productions, first this, first that. And second was actually, I hope I got this right, but it was another one of his kids, a multi-registry grand champion in Jax. Jax was number 2, and then third was his daughter Pantera. So his kids, swept that class 1, 2, and 3 at the Remy Line Kennel Club. Which Remy Line always showed us a lot of love, and that was like super shocking. And it wasn't planned to go that way. They just went and represented. And once it was all done, everybody was like, "Damn, that's all Denzel kids." So it wasn't something that was planned out at all. But what was even more interesting is that then the dog that won nationals, the whole championship that year, and he probably would have been a number 1 dog if he had shown more, was Ruger. And Ruger, like I told y'all earlier, is Denzel's nephew. So the blood ran deep, and it ran super deep. And like I say, one of the things I think that sort of made life bad for Denzel, and I don't mean his actual life, but with the hate. So some people always like, why he get so much hate, and he was such a good looking dog and an incredible pedigree. It all had to do with me and my whole rebellious, you know, F the system type of thing. And I'll go into that in the, in the second part of it, where that one will be more about me and what the controversy from his era was. But I tell you, one of the things that Denzel became anti everything. And what I mean by that is, of course, he was anti Dax, which he did fall into that era, coming in where Dax, even though Dax, not even being funny, but Dax lives basically, a third of what Denzel lived. So Denzel battled, different generations of dogs for a while. But he was definitely anti Miyagi. We was definitely anti screwed up dogs all the way together. And as it started to be a price boom and the American bullies started to become all about money, Denzel was actually like the face of anti money. It used to be like criticisms about that. Because one of the more interesting things, as after I got my hands on Denzel, I did a ton of like giveaway studs almost, to where I would sponsor, say for instance, a youth basketball team, or I sponsor this or I sponsor that, and I do it by the way to studs. Give me $1,000. All right, cool. That $1,000 goes to the little football team. Y'all need jerseys, whatever. It would help the breeder out. It would help somebody else out. I would also do and I also tell people, like, send me if you got a charity, go ahead, I'll sell the stud for them. People would call me, well, can we raffle off one of his studs? And then you approve the bitch. I wanted that mix because I wanted to not be the guy who was charging $7,500 for a stud, $5,000 for a stud. And even and with him being the face of everything and being the biggest dog, from that style of dogs, the real razor's edge pocket dogs at that time, I thought let me see if I can start a trend, which of course that trend never worked. I was the only one doing it. But it did allow for a lot of great breedings. All of the breedings that you see, after the fact, it was me just showing love to people, and Denzel being a representative of the breed in that way, and his kids continuing to go out and represent and represent. And it did become like an irony type of thing, because you would have people talking about, oh, that's them cheap dogs, that's them cheap dogs. But then you would show up at a show and Uno would clean up the class. Bison, clean up the class. You know what I mean? Castro, clean up the class. Denzel Jr., clean up the class. Bolo, clean up the class. It didn't matter if we put them in there, like I told you. You know what I'm saying? You had Evo cleaning up classes. So many shows where we went, and I don't give a fuck if it was ABKC, IBKC. You would see Denzel kids 1, 2, and 3, or they would meet, from different classes in the best show, and it would be nice fields. We was just whooping their asses left and right. They can't take that away because you see the titles. And it wasn't never about price, and that's the dog game that I came into, where your dog wasn't valued on price, but productions and how that mother carried itself and how it continued to produce. And but that caused a lot of envy, and that caused a lot of resentment, that caused a lot of hate, because to be honest, what I'm saying, money rules everything. And you're anti the whole money thing, when you're trying to push something in a different direction to not be all about money and all about, what I mean, what the community had turned into, it became it just became a thing. And unfortunately for him, although people definitely always still wanted to use his blood, he became the face of some kind of weird little hatred, to where people didn't want to deal with his name. And I'm just being real, and I have to speak on it, dog. I have to speak on it. And it's not being negative, but it's a lot of breeders, and I don't give a fuck if you hear this or if you take it some kind of way. A lot of y'all was just some suckers. You know what I'm saying? Whatever the case may be, I always stood on it. I never asked anybody to be like me. I never asked anybody to fight those battles, because I understood, and I'll talk about that more in the next video. I understood how crazy some of those battles were. I understand how some of that stuff was so stupid, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, though, so many of these breeders, and I'm speaking on Denzel now, so many of these lame-ass breeders that you see with all of this Denzel blood, right? Literally would try to leave his name out. When your dog was 3 or 4 times, you would be rocking a Denzel daughter, breeding to another dog that's 3 or 4 or 5 times Denzel, but you would try to say, oh yeah, that's whatchamacallit stuff or this or that or the other. Totally leave his name out, but you want his DNA because you was on some sucker shit and not really willing to ride for the dog that made your yard. It's plenty of yards around here that you see. I'm not lying to y'all. Yeah, and I'll discuss more of this in the next video because I feel like it has to be said. It's no magic trick that this dog is foundational all around. You know, you still see, I won't name these clowns, but y'all know who I'm talking about, different people. Y'all see them. Look at the pedigrees. This is not an accidental thing of what they was building their whole shit off of. And you know what the strangest thing about it is? The one guy who consistently, and I'm not saying he's the only one, because my man Bobo, you know what I'm saying, my man Nick Pike, it's a lot of cats who got, you know, the blood who represent the blood strong. And if I left your name off, it wasn't trying to slight you. I just don't want to go down that whole list. But one of the more amazing dudes who always gave Denzel his credit was Bashar. Strange as fuck, but you know, like I've always said about Bashar, he's always got some weird kind of honesty about himself. You know what I mean? But I've seen on occasions where people try to bash Denzel and he like, hold on, y'all tripping. You know what I mean? And I give him more respect for that because a lot of people, you know, who even tried to be close to me and call themselves my friends and was posed up in pictures with Denzel and was Denzel this, Denzel that. As soon as they had the opportunity to get his blood, I guess, the way that they wanted it and start doing other things, then they would stop mentioning the dog, you know. And it didn't change in pedigrees or anything, but it just became a thing of like where they was, you know, oh no, we're not gonna talk about Denzel because, like I said, not by his choice, it was by my choice, but Denzel represented something that was whatever. You know what I mean? It was whatever. He represented real American bullies. He represented still doing things because you have a passion for it. He represented clean, correct bullies. This is why Denzel don't have kids that are out here all screwed up. Denzel still got kids that's running around right now as he's gone. He's got kids that's running around right now, 11, 12 years old. You know what I'm saying? 11, 12 years old. He's got kids running around right now, 12 years old. You know, he's got kids titled up from the butt up. You know what I mean? Grandkids. The legacy continues. He did it the right way and stood on it. I'm not slandering any of them other dogs, but y'all, they don't measure up. Just be honest. I'm not going to name them off, but y'all just be honest. When you talk about a dog who killed the show ring, literally, like he wasn't a dog who was campaigned ever. So what I mean by, for those of y'all that don't know what campaign means, he never had a handler to take him around the country to a bunch of shows every week to gain titles. Denzel would just drop in and say, guess what? I'm going to take everything today. You talking about, I'm going to give y'all another weird ass stat. You talking about a nationals championship, 3 different championships, you know what I'm saying, as far as registries go, 3 different championships and registries. Do y'all know that this dog literally only really showed a dozen times? That show you his level of dominance. When he went, he took that shit and walked away. That simple. It wasn't no beating that motherfucker, man. When he was in his prime, it just wasn't. I'm just being real with you. He wasn't taking a bunch of L's and all that shit. Once it was over, you know what I mean? Yeah, you probably could have beat him then because he wasn't staying in shape for no show. He was just, you know, sort of laying around chilling. Always a house dog, you know. But the truth of the matter is that you line them up, and this is now when I speak for my dog, you know. You line them up and you talk about a title winning dog. Ain't too many dogs that can even say, if you wanted to put somebody in his realm, it would have to be Bistro or Mufasa, as far as show dogs go. Dogs who racked up titles, multiple registries, this, that, and the other, national championship winner. And the only thing about it is, like, you could put his son, the Bison, in that category because he sort of followed the same path as his dad. But Denzel is the only one to win the big nationals. You know what I'm saying? To win the nationals and all those titles. So, you know, he ranks right up there with the best show dogs. Then you start talking about productions, and that's where the game changes. Because as far as an elite show dog and one that killed the show ring, you show me how many of them actually has established themselves so much to the point to where people say his blood. Denzel gets talked about. He was just compared to Remy Line. You know, he gets talked about in the same breath as Remy as a producer, but he gets talked about in the same breath as Mufasa and Bistro as a show dog. It's nobody. It's no other dog that has that combination. And then if you want to talk about lineage, no other dog can put those two things together and say that my mom was the first ever ABKC champion and basically an undefeated bitch, and my grandfather was the original Dundada, you know, Paco. Lineage, productions, show wins. Like I say, if you know, just speaking for my guy, without all the hate, without all the bullshit, can't nobody ever say this dude didn't produce. Can't nobody ever say that this dog's pedigree wasn't one of the most fire pedigrees in the history of the breed. Can't nobody ever say that when he went to shows, he didn't show his ass. And then at the end of the day, when everybody else died, he lived a long ass life. So he got you longevity, he got you titles, he got you productions. His blood continues to live on now and is not causing a bunch of health problems. This is why I tell y'all, whenever it's a GOAT conversation from now on, I'm going to speak about my guy, because it depends on what you're trying to do. If it was hype, he might not have been the most hyped up dog. He's probably one of the more hated dogs. But at the end of the day, real shit, the productions live on, the stats don't lie, in any category. You know what I mean? In any category. You know, if people need to be reminded, in any category, just from this lineage, and I never do this, but I'm just being real because I get tired of people. His mama, the first ever champion. His granddaddy, the second ever champion. Denzel is the first ever champion to win three championships in registries. I done said that about 100 times now. Denzel is also the champion of the biggest nationals. You know what I'm saying? His son is the first ever dog to win, which I've said multiple times now, also a grand championship in 3 registries. His other son, Skokie, one of my productions, is the very first dog to win a championship here, then go over to Asia and win a championship, multi-continental champions. You know, we can just go down the list and we can keep on talking about what they did and what they didn't do. The number of championships where he had amassed so many dogs that had championships in different registries. The way they tried to discredit that, because we wasn't messing with the ABKC, a lot of his dogs were championed out in like the RKC, you know, and y'all heard about the accomplishments there. But they were championing out in the UBKC, the BBCR, you know, even showing IBKC and different things like that, where the dogs, UKC, I forgot about the multiple UKC champions. So he was having dogs champ out all over the board and dominating. Actually has, you know, weight pool champions. The championships just go on and on and on and on. I'm telling y'all, if we weigh this shit up, put that mug on that triple beam, y'all, a lot of these dogs can't catch up, period. Take the hype off the thing and let's just talk about what the dogs are. You know what I'm saying? I will be proud forever and a day for what Denzel, you know, meant to the game, what Denzel contributed to the game, what Denzel stood for in the game. You know, wasn't no big high price, I'm gonna charge you like hell and not produce. He worked, he put in most of his work at the working man's price and tore the fucking game up. To this day, right now, I take his sons and I'm telling y'all can go get whatever productions you want. I get my dream team of Denzel sons. Some of them I might have to bring back, but in their prime, y'all couldn't fuck with them. And you ask me who is somebody, I know it's somebody on the other side of the cat. Well, what's your lineup? If you gave me 5 dogs that I would have to put in the ring, right? Bison, which Bison already proved couldn't none of them dogs fuck with him. Only motherfucker they could put in the ring with him was his cousin. They had to put Ruger in the ring with him to fuck with Bison. Well, none of them, they couldn't beat him. It was one other dog that could beat him, and that was his brother, and they would never get in the ring together. So yeah, I put Uno on there. You know what I'm saying? So you put Bison and Uno in there right away, and I'm gonna leave off some, but then you could put Bolo super wide, because y'all always want to talk about stack offs. That motherfucker's chest was as big as mine. So you put Bolo in there, another champion that blew through every show, and basically they retired him and shipped him off to the farmland, whatever the hell they were doing. You know what I'm saying? And then you take Castro. Castro didn't lose. Castro never lost a classic show. Never. Not one time. Not one time in his whole career. The only time Castro would lose is when it came to best in breed. Sometimes he does have a couple best in shows, but I will put Castro on there. You know what I mean? Then after that, it's just like pick your poison. It's a million kids that I could put in there, whether it would be Jax, whether it would be Evo. Evo was very, very dominant. Jax was very, very dominant. I ain't even talked about Samson yet, who, to be real with y'all, Samson is one of the very few dogs to ever beat Bistro in a pocket class. I mean, I could go down the line, man. I could line these bitches up and I could keep on going. You know what I mean? I ain't said shit about Ganman. Ganman might have the most dominant structure of any dog that ever came out of anywhere in the American bully world. That's just being real. I keep on going. Like I told y'all about Pantera. He had another girl, forget her name right off the top of my head, but she won a ton of championships. It was actually Evo's littermate sister. And I could go deep. I could go deep, man. Look at this little girl always crying. But I ain't gonna go too deep. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell y'all on the next video I'm gonna go a lot deeper, but I done shed my tears. I love that boy. I'm gonna miss him. It ain't no recreating him, but I want to create dogs like him. But man, I would be here for 2 hours telling y'all about how that dog loved me. If you was ever at a show with me and you seen him, his eyes would never stop following me. Dude wanted to sit on my lap. Dude wanted, I couldn't even drive with this dude because this dude would cause an accident because he wanted to get all up under my feet or he wanted to be on my lap. That was my dude, man. It was. I don't think I ever loved a dog. Maybe his mom, but that was my guy, man. It was an honor. That's all I can say, dog. It was an honor to have had a homie like that, and I wish my life would have been more settled, that I could have got out a lot more, for more people could have seen him when he was on his best. But enough of y'all seen him to know what he was, and his impact is gonna be felt pretty much forever. So it is what it is. Until next time, y'all, much love. Peace.